I met some people who were actors, who were in the theater and who were doing Raising in the Sun. And because of that, I got very involved with Blackness and Black consciousness, you know. And I began to see what was happening to me in that atmosphere. My whole freedom thing had been geared toward another kind of standard, a European kind of thing. And I was not really developing the way I wanted to. Learn to love yourself. Learn to love yourself. That is your real self. And that's very hard to do. I'm still trying to do. Learn to love yourself. That is your real self. And that's very hard to do. Learn to love yourself. That is your real self. And that's very hard to do. I'm still trying to do it.
Out. Welcome to MBT at Home. I want to welcome our special guest this afternoon, the Bishop of Rest, Trisha Hersey. I'm so excited to be in conversation with you today. Welcome.
Thank you so much. I'm very excited to have a nice little chat.
Yeah, nice little chat.
Yeah.
I love that on that ministry you said, oh, we're going to have a nice, slow conversation. And I have to thank you for that prompt in particular, because the prompt is also an invitation and a reminder, which now has become all day as I was preparing for this, a mantra. I find so much of the work or the ministry of your book and of the Nat ministry itself is root work, right? And there is nothing in it that we don't know, but it's all the things we're taught to forget. So I just want to thank you. I've been direct.
Oh, wow.
For reminding us of all of the things we're taught to forget, and rest being the center of that.
Yes, I love that. Thank you. I'm happy to be here. Thanks for having me.
Yeah. Start with a quote that's actually yours.
Okay.
That's not awkward at all as I quote you to you. Because there are two quotes that shaped so much of this season of National Black Theater. This season theme is the defiance of our bloom. So the first quote I will say is from Toni Cade Barbara, Soul Leaders, Love, right?
Yes, of course. I'm reading it right now, actually. Yeah.
Oh, see? Spirit.
Yes.
It says, are you sure, sweetheart, that you want to be well? Just so you're sure, sweetheart, and ready to be healed, because wholeness is no trifling matter. A lot of weight when you're well. That got us, that set us afloat and a sail into all of these areas around how art is in service of our healing and our wholeness.
Yes.
Then as we look at it, we see how unwell our communities are.
Yeah.
So it asks us the question around, are we ready to be healed? And when you know the beginning well, the end doesn't trouble you. And so I guess the question is in all of this, and then I'm going to quote you, is to say that the defiance of our bloom is this is this ethos around unconsciously preparing ourselves and listening to this kind of ancestral wisdom that we in our conscious mind may not be ready to be well, but that subconscious, that dream space is pushing us forward. And that is the defiance that shows up in our bloom. That's all of those themes are very present in your work. And I'm wondering if you could talk about that a little bit, and our season theme about defiance of our bloom, what that brings out.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So good. Yeah, that's so good. It's so true. And it really is the heart and seat of the work, the heart and seat of my work as an artist even before I started the NAP ministry. So I guess I love what you said about art and what artists do and what it's here for, because I've been an artist since I was like born. I was like a 9-year-old, 8-year-old writing poems and reading Nikki Giovanni and theater and poetry and installation. I claim myself to be an artist. I don't think that this work could have come out of someone who wasn't an artist. Also I have the theology and academic background and the activist background. And so, but the heart of the work really is in being an artist and understanding that the work is really root work, like you said. It's ancestral work. I claim my book to be a trance work. Actually, I felt like as I was writing, I wanted to put people in a spell, put them in a trance. Maybe they could go into the dream space, they will sleep, there will be a moment of care. And so it's so important, I think, like you said, on the unconscious level, really to me is the conscious level, it's the spirit level. So this is spiritual work. And I've been so clear about that. And when I first came out, they were like, all the journalists and people were hearing about, and they were just kept trying to claim it as wellness work, as some new wellness bullshit, or they kept ignoring the fact that it was spiritual work. And because it's spiritual work, it's resistance and political work, because the political work is spiritual work, and I keep pushing and keep like grounding it in that, this is not just some whitewashed, here are the steps. If you do these 10 things, you will be able to rest better. My work isn't about resting to be productive. A lot of the sleep and rest narrative that we heard before I started to really put the work out in the world in 2016 was around sleeping, but it wasn't sleeping in service to be a better worker. Sleeping, get better, sleep better so that you can be more productive at work, so you can be more productive in your day-to-day life. And it was in service to the machine, in service to the empire. And I'm saying, no, the opposite. This is a counter narrative to the idea, saying we have done enough. We are enough, in that if people can tap into the divine. So the second tenet of the NAP ministry is that the body is a site of liberation. So wherever we find our bodies, we can find liberation and rest. And so this is what all we need, is this high technology temple here. We don't need extras. We don't, this is it. Like if I have this body, this Black body, this divine body, I have freedom. And so I love that you tap into that, because I usually have to come around circles with that and be like, it's actually spiritual work. It's not the work. You landed right on it. Yeah, this is trance work. It's spiritual work. It's deep ancestral work. It's taking us back to our humanness. And so I can distill what the work is in one word. If someone forced me to do it, I would say, this is work that's taking us back to our humanness. How more human, Sanchez has a beautiful poem that I love in this line where she just goes, to be more human. Like, where is the humanness in us? And because the systems have stripped us of that, have attempted to strip those of us to make us forget them. There, you can't strip divine from a body. We are divine. That belongs to someone, and that is a higher power than us. And so our bodies are always divine. So to make us forget. And so this work, like you said, is remembrance work. I'm hopeful that it's trans work. When I think about a manifesto, like I was very specific that I wanted to be a manifesto, my first book, because what I love about manifestos is that they create a spell. They kind of create the future. They create things that have never been said before. They kind of push back against dominant culture to say, hey, wait a minute, no, that's not right. Like, that's wrong. This is the way, this is another narrative. And so, yeah, trans work is deeply what this work is. It's deeply embodied. You can't just talk about it. That's why my work is not just in the books. The book came out like probably 5 years after I was doing the work. I was doing the work and they were coming at me, when you going to write a book? I'm like, I'm in the community laying down yoga mats, the book will come, I know a book will come, but the work is really the embodied collective body collective work. It's the laying down yoga mats. It's the creating spaces, these sacred spaces for people to rest together. It's holding space for deep community care so that we can feel held and cared for together. So it's on the ground community work as an activist an organizer my entire life, trained under my father, who was a union organizer and who was deeply a Pan-Africanist and who was all about, Black power and you are divine. And the Black church that I came up in which was an incubator for my liberation and for my ideas of freedom. That this is that. It's what that is. It's deeply embodied. You can't talk your way out of this. The facts won't save you. You can't talk your way out of this. This is going to have to be, we're going to have to lay our bodies down and enter into the portal of rest as many times as we can, as much as we can.
Whew, okay. I'm just like, we have so much in common. And of course we do, which is why we are in this moment having this conversation, because, National Black Theater, founded by Dr. Barbara Ann Teer, was founded to be that portal between the spirit and the humanity of who we were born to be, who we were truly born to be. And so she coined something called ritualistic theater, and that is, we come out of the tradition of ritual, and she would teach so much about the ritual killing of the oppressed person in us, which is trans work. When we were coming in today, we heard a segment of Dr. Barbara Ann Teer's kind of seminal interview on Black theater, and it's so interesting too, as you speak. The interviewer asked her, the last question was, if a young artist or actor, came to New York and asked you, what's important to know? And, they were getting at the labor of it. Take those acting classes.
Right.
And she was like, learn to love yourself.
Come on.
Like, that is the directional, because who we are and how we are is informed by that singularly. And that singular ministry of learning to love ourselves. And I would tell it to an actor, a director, a teacher, a dog walker, and you can't get to that space without the trans being in deep rest and meditation, because nothing around us reflects that back on a regular basis. And so as we're talking about this season, the quote that really was so directional in this idea of the defiance of our bloom was from the book that says, you were not just born to center your entire existence on work and labor. You were born to heal, to grow, to be of service to yourself and community, to practice, to experiment, to create, to have space, to dream, and to connect. In that is a recipe. That's so much of what I love about how you write. You're writing recipes. You're writing books. You're like,
love it.
And the recipe, everyone can remix for themselves as long as they have the ingredients.
Right.
So I'm wondering, you said earlier, and this is very interesting for me in particular. So I grew up, my mother, Dr. Barbara Ann Teer, was a witchy woman.
Of course.
She was as much art as she was conjurer. And the thing that was so germane to her practice was not the theater making, was not the labor of it all. She actually could care less. And I think it's very interesting inheriting this and, being a theater producer, because I know she did not care. It was a subversive act to get us to be in relationship with ritual and our ancestors' technology. And so a part of her practice was every Tuesday. So I live in the home I was born in, which is a brownstone in Harlem. My mom purchased all of these properties. Again, similar to like your ministry, she's undoing all of the things, right? So if ownership was the original sin that brought us here, where we were owned by folks, then like, what does it look like to center ownership in our practice of art making? So she bought these houses. she built this crazy, I had like the craziest 70s spa in my basement.
Love it.
And every Tuesday, all of the Black women in her circle would come and they would rest and they would relax and
Mm.
they would steam and sauna and hot tub. And
Wow.
I just thought they were the
You have
wildest.
this is so wild to me. I hate to interrupt you, but
No, go.
you know, I have this building, this rest temple here in Atlanta, and part of the imaginations of it, it's an old building, was built 1918. We're walking downstairs in the basement. I'm like, we need to turn this into a spa, like a sauna, like a bathhouse, where we can just secretly have women come down here who can't get away and have this whole, and they can rest and they can like get into their bodies. And there's nap pods upstairs and downstairs. It was like the water we need to have the sauna. We need the water. We need the bath. We need the body work. And so for you to say that you had one and now I want to build one, that was like part of this dream that I have, like, this has to happen for our body so that we can, because the way it's laid out, it will be perfect for that. And so
Yes.
that's so interesting that your mom had already did that, and that
And that was a part of her practice of art making. And the thing that, and as a result, you get othered. What they doing in that house?
Yeah.
And she was clear that without taking care of this temple,
Yes.
there was
There's
no
nothing.
play.
Nope.
But I'm interested, and because in this day and age of anti-racism training and capitalism co-opting all of our practices, there is this commodification that's turned into a term which she used in the 70s as self-care, which means something very different now in this very commodified space. And I'm wondering if you can kind of speak to the differentiation, because you are not talking about self-care as it is known today. You're talking about rest and the defiance of rest in this particular moment in time. So I'm wondering if you could talk to us about the difference between the two.
Yeah, I'm so glad that you bring this up, because that was, I love that you made this difference of what was happening, self-care back then, like what that meant. When I'm thinking about Audre Lorde, her quote about the idea of like taking care of myself is this act of, defiance. It's not frivolous and all these things. For the NAP ministry and for like the framework of rest is resistance, it is community care all the way. I have to communal care, community care. I like to also bring up the idea of soul care. As a chaplain and someone trained in theology, that was like a deep, interesting idea when I was doing like the spiritual holding space for people spiritually. It's like the idea of how do we care for our souls? How do you care for the soul of a community? How do you care, which goes back to the collective always. And so immediately, like when I first started the work was really just me experimenting on my own body. I had no ideas that it would be, I had no dreams or ideas at the beginning that it would be this global organization. I just knew that I was dying and I needed to save my life. I needed to rest. My body was deteriorating from the pace of life that I was trying to keep up with. So the experimentations were really on my own body. And then at the same time, I was researching, ancestors and doing archival research, and just knew that there is a connection here to justice work, because I was saving myself, which is a womanist tenet. It's a tenet of, if I'm saved, if I am well, if I have full agency over my body, then everyone who touches me, who's around me, will as well. My child, my husband, my partner, my community, anyone. So no one is free until we're all free. It's like this idea of deep collective. And so it was really important for me to just continue to uplift the term community care. I talk about it so much in my book. I actually say in my book that this is not some self-care tool. This isn't the self-care that you guys are thinking about, the commodified, the commercial, the consumeristic idea that we have to heal on our own and we can run down to a spa and that'll be enough, and then come back home to the same madness and oppression that's around us, that we have to do everything individually. That I knew that this work needed to only be in a collective. And so the first thing I did outside of experiment on my own body, the immediate thing, I was like, this has to be done in groups. I have to be together. So I didn't have a dime, I didn't have a space, but I didn't have yoga mats, but I just knew we have to host collective napping experiences. And that's what is our signature program. And it was The first one we did was 40 people. We've had them in small. Sometimes I would do them here in downtown Atlanta. One person would come and I would be so happy. You know, and the one person, I would be spraying lavender over them and got a pillow for them. And I would just hold space with them. And they would wake up and be like, oh, that was the best nap I've ever had. And sometimes it would be 200 people, but it didn't matter. If it was another person that I could hold space for rest, and then a collective of resting together. Also, I don't think people understand what a spiritual place it is to do things, specifically resting, which to me, and napping and sleeping is such a spiritual place, and it's a portal that opens. And so very much like theater and the arts, like when you're in a groove with the castmates and you're collaborating on stage to create this art and to be in tune with each other, like the spiritual things that happen, like the healing that happens when we're in the collective. And so many things have happened. And so I really, for this work and for the legacy of this work, I have to continue to lean into uplifting community and collective, communal. We cannot heal together. We can't do anything alone. Individualism is a death cult that I don't want to be a part of. And so, yeah, I think that is such a distinction in my work. But when I first launched it, people were really mad that I was being like, this work isn't about self-care, you know, self-care Sundays and self-care this and self-care that. I was like, we not that. It's community care. And they were like, what's that? You know, like many people, I think, just had never heard of it, even though they probably were doing it in their everyday lives, that because of the way trends happen, social media, and how people co-opt language, they just didn't understand what I was saying. I'm like, you're Black. Of course you know what community care is. You wouldn't be alive if it wasn't for the community being in your life. Like, you would not be here, literally. So you know what it is, but we have to lean in more to it and uplift it as truly our deepest form of liberation. We have to be in collectives together.
That is truly where power resides, right?
Yes.
It's in this individual work to learn to love ourselves, and in the collective work of doing it together. I you know, it's funny. My brain's going all the places, because you know. In the words of Langston Hughes' "Life ain't been no crystal stair." I remember in taking over the helm of MBT in 2008 upon my mother's passing, really trying to navigate how to move forward. Two things were true. One, none of this would be possible, obviously, without her vision. And none of it would have been possible without my dream state, by which I get unfettered connectivity to her, her vision, and all of our ancestors' wisdom, like right there. So it's like the portal work is more like when folks say, oh, this is trans work or it's meditation, like I've lived with the cost of what it has meant to be like, oh, I don't know what they're doing over there. They burning incense, right?
Yes, right.
They might put a root on us because, you know, but no one also can understand how we're growing so fast, how we're so beloved, how it goes from local to international. And so as we started having to like perform for larger audiences and different stakeholders, I was very clear, and everyone said it'll be the death of your progress, is that we are a community theater with a capital C. That I'm not taking community away to say we're a regional theater, we're a nonprofit. It was like, no, the community part of the theater is the superpower. And so it is very true that, like, especially for Black folks, and that's my next question. If you could talk to why rest in particular for Black people is critical. But just to finish the thought, so this idea that, you know, we only can heal in community, and that what I have started to dispel is this idea that, especially through the pandemic, where we were all each other's keeper, that community, the impact of how we care for each other as community was literally life or death, is that there is no such thing as safe space. Like, I literally, you cannot create or hold safe space.
No.
But what's safe for you ain't it for somebody else. But
Yes.
this idea that we can create caring spaces
Yes.
in community, it can sustain and is sustainable, and we can be accountable for how we
Mhm.
care and hold space for each other in that way.
Yes. Totally. So true. I
But
love
if you could talk about, because for like the in particular, obviously rest is essential. I
Mhm.
think rest for anyone, going
Mhm.
all the way back to the Bible,
Yeah.
are portal states.
Mhm.
But why is it critical
Yeah.
for Black folks?
You have to get into the history. As an archivist, like this work is also a historic examination. It's an examination of history. I tell this story a lot that as I began to rest on my own body, and I was in graduate school and I was laying down all over the campus and coming home and sleeping because I just was killing myself. The pace was so. At the same time, I was working in the archives at Emory University in their manuscript rare books library, and was able to get my hands on so many things. And so I was studying Black liberation theology and womanist theology, and I was studying cultural trauma, and my research was around the idea of the somatics of cultural of trauma on Jim Crow survivors, and like what it did to our bodies and what it felt like to hold space and be in a place of where Jim Crow. So I got to interview Jim Crow survivors, which is just basically your grandmothers. It's not like you got to go far. It's not like this isn't like this history where I had to go to anywhere and just talk to an elder, and they can talk about what it was like to hold space and be in a place of trying to survive and thrive during Jim Crow terrorism. And then I began to do research on slavery and the transatlantic slave trade and and cotton and what the idea of white gold cotton was. I actually have some cotton here from a place in North Carolina that's called Black Cotton US. And so I was really looking at the idea of what was it like to pick cotton. Like I wanted to understand the details of what it did to our bodies, the heat. What did they do when they had to go to the bathroom? What about women who had to have babies? So I just got into the micro histories as an historian, and in this work that began to hold shape for the work. It was like, oh, we were America's first capital. Capitalism was basically created on our bodies. They were experimenting on what a Black body could hold. How long could they automate a body? Could it work 20 hours without a break in the fields? This cotton, the plantation, this agriculture that was making America billions and billions of dollars, like building the entire structure. For me, that's when the rest is reparations model start to come in, because rest is resistance, but rest is reparations is also my work. And so the idea of I am resting for them, like that I can in some way gain reparations through my resting, that I could rest for my grandmother who was a sharecropper who couldn't get a time to rest in Mississippi. And so someone must rest for you. And I'm the person who's like the debt collector for my ancestors. I'm calling people up and like, this is a debt. And so to me, I found resting as a direct line for me to honor my ancestors and for me to gain reparations for them in this dimension, for me to go into the portal to communicate with them so that they can give me information that could help me in these times. And so the more I rested, the more I was having dreams of them, the more I was tapping into this dream space. So people like, how did you come up with the idea of this ministry? And how did you do all this stuff with just you and an assistant? I just got an assistant like a year ago. I'm like, my ancestors were collaborators. Like that was the whole, like I was able to collaborate with them because I'm helping to the idea of reparation. So for Black people in this culture, when I hear Black women and Black people tell me that they just feel lazy, and I just say, whoa, like that's when you see on the ground what the systems have done to us mentally and spiritually, that you as a person who is come from a lineage of enslavement and a lineage of what was happening during the transatlantic slave trade, and for you to think that you could be lazy in the capitalist system, that you could even speak the words of calling yourself lazy because you're listening to your body's need to rest. That's when I knew the brainwashing was so deep. And when it broke my heart open. So this work really is a heartbreak work. It's work around me trying to like heal my heart. I'm so broken by what the systems have taught us about ourselves. And so for us, I think it's a direct connection to us to gain reparations. We should be resting the most in this culture. The labor that we continue to do, the way Black bodies are looked at. I'm thinking about Black women and how we are the muse of the world and just take on so much from so many people. And so, yes, this work is a global bomb for all of humanity, but it is rooted in Blackness and rooted in a lens of Black liberation. Nobody is going to be free on this planet until Black people are free. And so we need, period. So we need to be resting the most. We need to see it as ancestor work. We need to see it as something past just, I'm so tired. I don't have time to lay down. No, you don't have, you have to lay down. Like there is no
life or death.
It's life or death. And I talk about my dad dying in my book, that I believe Brian culture killed him, and like the way diseases are linked to us, and this lineage of exhaustion that's on our bodies. We should see resting as not just some afterthought, but literally the foundation for how we move in a capitalist culture like this. They don't deserve our bodies. I will not donate my body to a system that still owes a debt to my ancestors. You don't get to have me and kill me off of my labor, off of my grind, off of all the sickness that's happening in bodies, because we just won't rest. And so to me, it's reparations, it's deep reparations, it's deep ancestor repair, connection to them. Like, I rest for them. And so whenever it starts to get shady about I'm on the grind and I got to do this, I'm like, no, I'm not doing them like that. I will not play them like that. They were America's capital. All of these things were experimented on their bodies. I want to gain connection to them. I want to rest for them. It is a political refusal. It really is.
Yes to all of that. Rest as reparations feels, I got goosebumps all over my body, because it is because through that frame it becomes a responsibility. We understand the cost that they paid, and we understand how to look back towards and honor our ancestors by reflection. But how do we do it in action? And the idea that we could reclaim that for them is really so very powerful, and how courageous it is. I will say there's two really stand out, two moments of deep courage for me. One is the consciousness, and it is your anthropological archivist curiosity and scholarship, that this idea that we have to acknowledge that our bodies for generations have been traumatized. Our relationship with our choices and decisions are trauma informed. And that when you say that you're lazy, that is a trauma informed response. That the trauma of not being in service to the labor of someone else. And so when you start to shift and understand that we have to find ourselves in spaces where we can remember what we were taught to forget, and rest. Here's a beautiful thing about rest, right? Rest is actually an invitation for all the folks that are still caught up in capitalism. It is an invitation to work smarter, not harder.
It is.
I understand
it is.
What I have been able to accomplish, what we as a collective community have been able to accomplish, that my mother for 40 years before me was not able to, is because she was grinding for her people, as opposed to resting for her people, because the rest is the portal to the technology that advances us into an unimagined future that we get to imagine in our dream space.
I'm gonna throw something at you. It is.
And so it's an invitation to all of our brothers and sisters and humanity for us to begin to work smarter. Because it all resides right on the other side of this awake And then the
Yes,
other thing
yes.
that the courage to understand, the courage to, and the curiosity to be willing to have a conversation with trauma,
Yeah.
to be courageous enough to say, I don't have the answers, but I will rest and they
That's
will
it.
come,
Yeah.
as an institution builder, or as a cultural
Mhm.
worker, whatever.
Mhm.
My most courageous act, and we're building this new gorgeous theater of the future.
Right.
We got to raise all this
Oh,
money. I am
right.
constantly out. Like, there's all of these things. But the most courageous act I feel like I can remember that I've done was being on a Zoom with a funder, where
Mhm.
we were up for this very big grant that supported two individual artists, to not to have full-time salaries and benefits.
Mhm.
It's
Wow.
Creatives Rebuild New York. And we put forth these two incredible playwrights, Black women. And there was a part of the grant that comes to the organization. Now, I had rehearsed these artists knew exactly what they were going to do with the
Mhm.
funds and what it meant to not have to
Right.
grind in order to be able to create all of that. And then they turned to me, Trisha, and they said, and with your portion of the grant, what will you do?
Uh-huh.
I had not prepared. So
Right.
that's when you go to the trans state. And you know
Mhm.
what I said?
What?
I'm going to rest.
I'm gonna rest. That's what I was gonna say.
I am going
Yes.
to find a way to invite, and I got emotional on this call with like these very powerful folks.
Yeah.
I'm going to invite as many people on my staff and artists that we get the privilege to support to rest. And
Yes.
so it looks like retreat. And it was the
Mm.
most courageous act, because what I was
Yes.
supposed to say is, well, we're going to create
Yes.
this program
Yes.
that does
Yeah, yeah.
X, Y, and
Mhm.
Z, and then it'll
Mhm.
deepen the impact. But all that my spirit and my ancestors would allow me to say is that
Yes.
I'm going to find as
Right.
many ways to
Mm.
incorporate rest, because we deserve it. It is
Yes.
the only way forward.
Yes.
And the mouths open on the ground, like,
Yes. I
and when
love
we got
it.
off that Zoom, we had a little roundup. I said, well, I ruined that for y'all. So I
Yes.
apologize.
Oh.
I apologize.
Oh.
But that's what Spirit was telling me.
Yeah.
And not only did we get,
I
it
know
was
you
one of
got
the,
it.
yeah, it was one of the most competitive applicant pools. We not only have these two incredible artists, Fedna and Ngozi, on staff with us, but we have been able to use
Mhm.
a friend's space in Vermont to bring as many playwrights, choreographers,
Right.
actors to rest.
Of
And
course.
and
Beautiful.
and it has been the most transformative, impactful, courageous work that I've been able to do.
That's
We've been able to do.
that,
Yeah.
yeah. I knew when you said, I was like, they got it, because of course that's so powerful and so beautiful. It's like, this is the way forward, and this is not, it's not an afterthought. It's not something you do after you're burnt out, after you're traumatized by the system, but if we can see it as the foundation for our lives, the foundation for our work. People say, how do I rest? So I rest more than anyone. You see, I say no to 90% of the things asked of me. I take so many naps. I'm always resting. And then every time I do it, things just come to me. I haven't asked for one thing. I haven't broken
Mm.
my life. I haven't done any publicity. Like, I don't know how to write any type of like sheets for publicity. Like, people, I just take naps, wake up, and then opportunities are right here. Because I'm in the portal that rest provides. I'm with the ancestors who are, making my wings and putting wind under me. And the more I rest, the more I thrive. The more I rest, the more I thrive. And so, yeah, I feel like the systems has really tricked us and bamboozled us from a very early part of the work. I always said there was a deep bamboozlement that had happened, and we have been tricked, socialized, manipulated from birth. I trace it back to birth, even sometimes before birth.
Yeah.
On the ways and what labor means in a culture and what labor means to who we are and our worth, and we internalize all these things. But the real gag, the real key is that the less you do, the more you're going to thrive. But they tell you the opposite. You got to keep going. You got to go hard, grind, do 10 times the work because you're a Black person. You got to work harder than your white counterparts. And I have found that it is the opposite. I've been able to grow this global organization. Literally, my son always laughs at me. He was like, Mommy, every time I see you, you in a bonnet and a robe. He was like, you don't never, he was like, you always in a bed. And I'm like, I was like, yes, this is part of the work. The more I'm in the bed, the more this ministry has grown, the more ideas and downloads I've received. Downloads, like the more I'm just finished up my second manuscript for my second book. It's going to be published last week, it's going to be published in November. And so like, I'm able to channel so much because I'm sleeping, I'm resting. The more I just take naps, the more information comes to me. And so it really is a spiritual place that they've stolen from us and attempted to make us forget, make us forget, and so this is a remembrance, this is repair, this is go into the portal that rest provides as much as you can. And also the reimagination of what resting is so key for our people. The subversive nature of reimagining what it is. It's not just a full nap cycle. It's not just sleeping fully. Of course, we want to be sleeping 8+ hours a night. We want to be taking naps, but resting to me is anything that slows your body down enough that your body and mind can connect. So I'm thinking about dancing, listening to music, crocheting,
meditation, things that
walking,
support you to meditate, meditative acts of ritual.
Ritual slows down. Making tea, the ritual of making tea, I feel like is a rest moment. All these things that connect you, bathing, I really saved my life. It was a deep collaborator with me while I was resting. I was taking baths every day, salt baths, and just really protecting and really trying to like give so much energy to this wholeness of my body. And so the more that we can do that from the ritual things that we've already know, this is ancestral, this isn't some new thing I'm pulling out. I am a daughter of, the ancestors. I'm a daughter of my grandmother Aura, who was resting her eyes in between her 2 jobs, raising 8 children. And I'm like, what is she doing? She's sitting on her couch with her eyes closed 30 minutes to an hour every day. And I always thought she was sleeping. And she said, no, baby, I'm not sleeping. I'm resting my eyes. Every shut eye ain't sleep. I'm listening. I'm listening to God. I'm listening to the universe. She said, I am listening. And what was that listening holding for her? That was rest. And so to see us reimagine what rest can be, it's infinite ways to disrupt and push back against a system that says you should be going and doing and producing 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. There should never be a moment that you're not producing, creating, grinding, making. And so I think we just can, this is an ancestral work. This is work that is deeply rooted in ritual. And it's work that is ours to have. And we don't need anything but this body,
Right. That's right.
Yeah.
And I just want the folks that are listening to solicit, if you have questions for Trisha or myself, you can put them in the chat, and we will try to get to some of your questions in this conversation. But I mean, it's hard to, because there's so much to talk about. And I think that, just to build off of that, we say at MBT, it is Black liberation in service of human transformation. And that is our theory of change. Is the idea that Black liberation plus art plus placemaking, and the placemaking is the owning of our bodies, of our spaces, ownership, that is the condition for human transformation. And I think about the most transformative approach to our artwork, which is uniquely in BTs, is something that we call holistic producing, which is what the dramaturgical deck around Defiance of Our Bloom is an extension of our holistic producing. But that word whole combined with human transformation becomes essential, because, as you're talking, I'm like, of course we were stripped of our spirituality. We were stripped of everything that could affirm that we were 3/5 of a man. And we've still been walking around as 5/5 of ourselves. With the with the 2/5 being that connectivity to the people who built the fucking pyramids, right? Like that is our birthright. Like what we have been birthed into is not our birthright.
No,
this does not belong to us.
Absolutely.
And we have to be active participants in the unshackling of ourselves, so that we can imagine an Afro future by which we're all free, but it starts with how we get free,
That's right. Yeah, absolutely. It's so good. Oh my God.
and that the rest part, because, and this is kind of how I was raised, is because rest wasn't a conversation. I'll be very clear. Like, you brought rest into the zeitgeist in a way that nobody has, from my estimation. People have talked about rest, and not as a ministry. My mother had this spa in her basement and understood the importance of that. But let it be clear, she was also the descendant of grind culture, right?
Yes.
Her
generation, yes.
Yes, but she was spiritually connected enough to understand that her grind culture was connected to being an entrepreneur, because she watched her father have a printing press in the basement, be a football coach, be a landlord, and have apartment buildings in St. Louis. But that was still a grind. And so my final question before I open it up to questions from others is the brass tacks, right? The brass tacks of what you are writing about, what you are preaching about, what the NAP ministry is about. The ideology of rest resonates with every cell in, I think, so many people's body.
Yes.
How do you do it when you're pulled in all of these directions? And when your grind is about the liberation of your people? Because I will tell you real straight up, Trisha, when I picked up the book, first of all, I had to listen to it, because I was like, I'm going to be resting while I take in what Trisha's saying. I literally got like a few hours in and I had to put it down. It was so disruptive. It was so disruptive, because what you're channeling and what you're saying disrupts everything that we're doing. And then how do I wake up and do what I have to do, knowing that it's harm? So can you talk to that?
I'll just say right off the top, it's not easy. That's one thing that people say, oh my, I sound so good, I want to do it, but it's just so hard. I know. I just want to say, I know it's going to be hard. What do you think? We're up against very violent systems. You think it's going to be easy to disrupt and push back against white supremacy and capitalism to demonic violent systems? No, it won't be. And so I think just giving yourself grace and mercy off of that, of knowing that you are up against machines and in our lifetime, that these systems may never fall. And we have to be okay with that and grieve that. But what has helped me in the midst of all of this is I always go back to the blueprints. I go back to my ancestors. I think about maroonage. Okay. I just think about maroonage. I think about escaping. I think about what they were doing. I think about the Maroons. I talk about in my book, jumping off slave ships during leaving plantation, just getting lost and just never to be seen again, like creating their own temporary spaces of joy and freedom in caves and in the woods and in the water where they were never found, and they were living, and it wasn't some type of, they didn't see themselves as fugitives. They were not fugitives. A fugitive is a person who is unlawfully on the run. There's nothing unlawful about wanting freedom. There's nothing unlawful about being free. Like that's your pathology that you created around white supremacy. But to be human is to be free. And so I just think about, them and what they were doing, like leaving a plantation while in the midst of what was happening during plantation labor and slavery, to say to that system, I hear, okay, but that ain't me, so it's just this deep refusal and this idea of maroonage that I am going to have to create. Indigenous people know this, African people know this, that there's a temporary space, a third space, I will call it. I like to call it a third space that we're going to have to create. And we're going to create this telepathically, psychologically, mentally, spiritually, and sometimes physically. Like in the case of the spaces, like the institution your mother has built, the NAP ministry having a space, but it's always does not have to be a physical space. This is a psychological, telepathic, and mental, cultural, and paradigm shift that happens spiritually in us. And so, I think the deeper that we can move into the idea of maroons, of really studying their movements and studying, understanding what it means to maroon yourself in a system like this, because slavery is still around. You know, what capitalism is, it's still running on capitalism was built off of slavery. And so the system of capitalism that we're still in right now moves and functions just like that. They just shut down the plantations and they just moved it to the factory. They just shut down the cotton gins and they moved. But we're still mentally in this space of not being free from the confines of living in a system like capitalism that doesn't see you as human, that only looks at profit over people, and that makes it very, very difficult to not thrive, but to just survive, to just eat, to buy groceries, and to have a place to stay. And so I understand how hard it is. And I just want people to understand that there is a blueprint that is very subversive. It is so flexible. It is trickster energy. And so I think if we can, the idea of trickster energy, of being a trickster, of finding spaces in these temporary moments to meditate, to close your eyes, to slow down, to say no, to have healthy boundaries. This is really an invitation for healing to happen, for healing, deep healing work. So the more that you heal from the trauma of your childhood, from the lies that have been told to you, from the culture, from all the things that you just so beautifully said about what they tried to make us forget, the more that you can begin to heal, this is healing work, and grieve that, the more it will boost up your understanding of how to be a maroon, how to find rest in a capitalist system. You're going to have to be an escape artist. And so give grace to that and understand that the information doesn't need to be figured out in this time. Right now, it needs to just be experimented with. We need to be curious. We need to just say, I don't know how it's going to all work, but I know that the pace of this life I can't keep up with. That alone is a seed in fertile ground, and that is enough.
Yes. Yes. And I think being prepared, right, is also a part of it, because I find that, like,
deep preparation.
They
weren't just leaving the plantations and going and building homes and economies out in the caves. They weren't just lolly. They were out there for 15, 20 years having babies, had their own economies. They had built a third space within the space that they were already in. And so the preparation was very real. When I think about the Underground Railroad, the preparation was not no joke. They were tapping into some places that we need to go there with them.
Sorry, my connection just got a little bit shaky for a second. I think, and what a beautiful example for us, right? Because this rest work, as an extension of our humanity,
yes,
as an extension of the possibility
yes,
to not survive but to thrive, requires preparation. And when I say that, and you may push against that, it is the deep grief that you will encounter.
Yes. It's grief work. Yes.
It's grief work.
Deeply.
And grief work is love work.
Yes.
But we don't have the language around that and the fear of what falls away. Because it does fall away.
Yes.
All this shit falls away to reveal the life you were always intended to live. For your people, for yourself. But there is a lot of sorrow. It is back to the Tony K. Bombara quote. Are you ready to be well?
Yeah, that's the quote. Yes. Are you ready? No? I'd say that to people. Are you ready to make these real gangster decisions about what you're going to do? Like, I will say no to something, and I just trust that the creator, my ancestors, have me. I have deep radical trust. I trust them. I trust my body. I don't trust these trash systems. And so I have found a place to get out of the scarcity idea. And I'm deeply in abundance. I will be taken care of. If me leaping off of that ledge so that I can be free from the confines of grind culture means that, then I'm ready to do it. And I just let the chips fall where they may. I repeat that in the book so many times. Let the chips fall where they may. I trust the creator. I trust my ancestors. I trust this divine body gifted to me. I don't trust, why would I ever trust a violent system that has, done all it's done? So the more we go back into, like your mother said, loving yourself, loving ourselves, like that is so key to me. And so I really resonate with that idea. It's so beautiful.
So we have questions.
Okay.
And I am not a tech person. Oh, here they go.
I'm not me
Questions to
either.
offer, Kelly. Thank you for your question. What advice do you have for staying diligent about rest while job seeking and resisting scarcity narratives? Good question, Kelly.
Just trying to find small ways to slow down.
Mm.
We all, I don't know if it's our training or the American way that we feel like we just got to have these meticulous, miracle-based things that all these lists. Literally, just slowing down and maybe taking 10 minutes to just be like, you know what? Instead of just rushing to this next thing, I'm just going to sit and go stare at a tree. I'm going to look at the sky. I talk about that in my book. Like on my way, I was working 2 jobs in graduate school full time and raising a 6-year-old son with no money. And I would be taking the train in Atlanta to campus. And on my little moments of taking the train to this job that was paying me $10 an hour and I couldn't afford to even buy lunch sometimes, I just take a deep breath and I just would look at nature. I love Howard Thurman, this idea of nature being spiritual, nature being our connection to the creator. I would just stare at the trees and the sky, and it felt like this daydreaming moment. So start to daydream. Give yourself a 10-minute practice in daydreaming. Daydream what it's going to be like and what it's going to feel and smell like when the scarcity narrative has died, and when you have the career or the job that you really love. I think our imagination is such a tool for our deep liberation that when we're exhausted, when we're not resting, when we're just burnt out, that we really don't see how powerful of a tool it is. But Bell Hooks laid the framework when she said imagination is one of the most powerful tools of those oppressed. And so I would say slow down, even if it's 10 minutes a day, and tap into the idea of daydreaming and connecting with a daydreaming moment, and just start to imagine what it could be like for you.
Yeah, and what I would offer to that too is that our ancestors, like the reminder, right? So this in terms of what a lot of folks like to operationalize things.
They love it.
I love
Yes.
an operational moment, but I will say giving yourselves reminders and prompts. Like I was on that ministry and I saw your post about this conversation, and it was like, oh, I can't wait to have a slow conversation.
Yes.
This whole day, that was my mantra in my head. Like, we're going to come, we're going to have a slow and luxurious conversation around wherever it goes, right? And so I think that, like, remembering that you are the altar, not the sacrifice, as you navigate your way through whatever is on your to-do list, and give yourself the thing that prompts you to slow down. For me, my girlfriend Beatrice Dixon, who I love, 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 she gifted me a session with somebody who just said, your and I sat with them and they told me, your ancestors are all around you. And I said, I know. She's like, but you don't need to, have to make the altar, have to make sure the lights are down, the incense is burned, the flowers.
Yeah, let them move for you.
Say, help me. And I say it like 11 times a day, and that slows me down.
Yes.
It is the moment of surrender.
Collaborate with them. Yes.
Collaborate with them. And that will automatically remind you to take that breath, to be slow, because you have to slow down to be able to hear what they want to deliver.
You have to listen. Like Grandma always said, I'm listening.
I'm listening.
2 jobs and raising 8 children and poor, suffering from post-traumatic stress syndrome from leaving Jim Crow South because she saw a lynching. She sat on that couch. I have a picture she's a picture on my IG page. The first post that's there, I just put it up. A picture of her sitting on that couch. She did that every single day for 30 minutes. Sometimes with her uniform on to go to her next job. And she said, I'm listening. Wow, like that was a moment of rest where she's listening to what the universe wanted to tell her, what God, what her ancestors, but the slowing down part, you're so key with that. So I hope that was a good answer for her.
Me too. I think it was. How do you bring, okay, this is from Cole. Hey, Cole. How do we bring communities to rest and trance together?
I mean, there's so many answers to that, but for the sake of time, I think what's popping into spirit right now, I've been thinking a lot about sound, I do a lot of stuff with sound, like music and sound bowl and just silence is also a sound. We forget that silence is a sound. You know, have you ever been in a church and they're like, we're gonna have a moment of silence, and they just start playing the organ? It's like, that's not silence because you're playing the organ. It's like silence is also a sound. I say that, you know, in this rest meditation that I have on Spotify. And so the idea of, I think that's a way that you can really enter in the work that I was doing with the collective resting events. I didn't have a dime. They were always free. People, the community just offered space for me to be in basements of churches, yoga studios, outside people's conference rooms. Like, people just gave me spaces to use for an hour, and I will host these rest events for the community. Whoever came. You also can start with your own family. Like, to me, a community is you and another person. We always think about communities in these grand ways, and has to be thousands of people connected, but community is you plus one. So really start with your family and your people around you, who like a couple feet around you. How can we begin to like hold boundaries for people? If they have a boundary, we like respect that. We learn to not be urgent. We slow down. We make it a part of how we move with each other and how we hold each other, is that we offer space for spaciousness and slowing down.
Yeah. And I would also say, just talk about it, right?
Mhm.
Like, people are so quick to talk about that movie they saw, that thing they bought, like
Yeah,
that, you know, that
conversations,
concert ticket. Like, you know, I've heard everybody's Beyonce experience, but I
yes,
haven't heard your rest experience.
yeah,
So
what you,
the thing
yeah,
about it is, it's like, it's contagious
mhm.
because it is unending in its offerings, right? And
Yes,
that we have to talk about it, because, you know, if you make rest sexy, and not sexy from the commodification, but like, nah, I can't meet you tonight. You know, I'm resting. You know, it
becomes the
begins to
norm, normalized it, yeah.
yes, and enter it
Mhm.
into the consciousness and the vernacular, and then people become curious. Well, can I rest with you? You could, or you know
Mhm.
what? If you're interested, maybe I can invite folks over to do this. But we have to
Yes,
normalize it, right?
yes,
Like, and the normalizing of it, there's a part of the normalizing that's for the people, and there's a part of the normalizing that is for us, right?
yeah.
And I would
Mhm.
say, never lose sight that this is root work. In
Yeah,
the words of Mahogany L. Brown, this is root work. Never lose sight that your approach to your liberation through rest, through art making,
yes,
is a subversive act.
yes,
Because I was
absolutely.
talking to a playwright friend, girlfriend of mine, and I said, she was feeling really bogged down by just
Mhm.
systems of oppression and white supremacy and how it shows up in the American theater field. And I said, you know, the moment that I became free from all of that, and why I'm listening to you, I'm holding space, sis. But I realized that, and because my mother realized, but that I
Mhm.
am not in my life change. I am not in the business of theater.
Yep,
I am in the business of freedom. And
yeah.
when you realize that you're in the business of freedom,
Mhm.
that all of your acts are acts of service to freedom and liberation.
That's right.
And so we talk about rest from that perspective. We
Yes.
don't make a delineation between producing the play and
Yeah,
creating and finding time for rest in the process of making the
exactly.
work. Because,
Integrating is in,
yes,
yes, it's the
and
integration. Mhm.
integration, and talk about it casually, right?
Mhm.
It is, like I say, I'm a sacred space architect. Like, if you come in my house, I got everything's an altar. I got an altar here for this, an altar.
I
I
love it.
love doing it, but I
Yes.
don't have. But that is my artistic expression of manifesting how to hold space. But I also understand that I hold space every single day in the way that I hold my
Yes.
body and the way that I hold space for other people. So yeah, it is normalizing
Mhm.
rest and
Mhm.
inviting people into conversations about it, so it doesn't feel othered, but that it feels like an invitation to themselves, to their
Yes.
highest
That's
self.
exactly what it is invitation. That's what I hope my
Amen.
work to be, is an invitation that it sparks some imagination and some, it makes you say, be curious, because our curiosity is really where so much freedom and generative ideas and community lie. I'm just curious. I'm just a Black artist, Black woman who's curious about the idea of what rest can be for our liberation and how rest is justice work. And so from that little seed of curiosity, this has grown. And so I'm just grateful for that so much.
We are grateful for you. We are grateful for your bloom. We are grateful. I am grateful to be able to take this time during the day to have this conversation with you.
Thank you. It's been amazing. I would love to talk to you again. I want to come see the space.
Oh, yes. I would love that. And how we can, we're gonna stay connected. We're gonna stay connected.
Yes.
I got ideas for your son. Like, once you find family,
yes,
pouring water on the roots. So
I
thank
love
you, Trisha, so
thank
much.
You. It's such a pleasure. So much blessings to you and to everything you're doing. I love it. It's so anointed, and it's just a legacy that I'm proud to have been able to speak with you.
Oh, shame. Me too. Thank you so much. And thank you everybody for tuning in. You can share this once it gets posted to our page. I don't know how to do any of these things at the end, but you can check out Trisha's book, Rest is Resistance, a Manifesto. I love that, a manifesto part. Yes. You can follow her work at the Nap Ministry. And of course, you can find us at Nap Black Theater on IG and all of the different social channels. Thank you again, Trisha.
Bye, guys. Happy
Bye.
rest.